If a cookbook can be revolutionary and fundamentally change the way people relate to food and wine, then Julia Child's Mastering the Art of French Cooking is that book. It was the result of Julia's own evolution, moving to France from the States and falling in love with the culture and the cuisine. When the cookbook was published in 1961, Julia brought classic French cooking into millions of American homes for the first time. But rather than being fussy, her down-to-earth approach made the food accessible. I'm Owen Dugan.
And I'm Bruce Sanderson. We worked together to match wine with some iconic French recipes from Julia's cookbook. We asked a few chefs to contribute their favorite classic recipe as an homage to Julia. Thomas Keller of French Laundry in Percé sent us a refined Boeuf Bourguignon.
Julia Child's Boeuf Bourguignon recipe took a couple of pages and nearly 20 ingredients to explain, which seemed pretty complicated back in 1961. Keller loves to refine classic recipes. Every element of what appears to be a simple dish is packed with more flavor and complexity than the original, but the soul-satisfying element remains.
Julia's Mastering the Art of French Cooking could be considered revolutionary for another reason. It was one of the first American cookbooks to recommend wine pairings. Coming from a European sensibility, she understood wine to be an integral part of the meal. American foodies and the young wine industry took note and began trading their cocktails for wine. When the book was published, Julia recommended the classics: a red Rhone, Beaujolais, Burgundy, or a Bordeaux from Saint-Emilion. Since 1961, the number of serious wine regions around the world has exploded. We picked the red Rhone, which is made from Syrah. Owen, tell us about the Boeuf Bourguignon.
Well, it's a classic French dish. You brown the meat and add vegetables and cook it at a low temperature for a really long time in a lot of wine to build those complex flavors. Now, Thomas Keller, of course, never met a recipe that he couldn't refine further. He turns what's essentially a one-pot dish into a several-pot dish. He fills the braising liquid with flavors before he adds it to the beef. The whole dish comes out even more complex and with more depth than usual. I would also say of this dish, typically you get a really rich velvety sauce. The meat should be fork tender, but also have really deep flavor, and then you have those vegetables which give it a little brightness.
The beef is so tender, it's amazing. And I love the intensity of the braising liquid. Well, let me talk about the wine for a minute. The wine that we chose is a Saint-Joseph Orpheus from Jean-Louis Chave's selection. And typical for a young Syrah, it's full of blackberry fruit, some hints of violet, and certainly a strong mineral note. And the mineral I get here is iron, and there's a little bit of tannin. It's quite dense, but I would say overall it's an elegant wine. Despite that elegance, it has wonderful intensity, and that's what I like about this Syrah with the dish. It stands up to the intensity of the braising liquid, and it also brings out the flavor of the beef. And I think at the same time, it doesn't compromise the wine. You still have the wonderful fruit flavors of the wine. In fact, I think it makes the wine more elegant, more subtle. Well, what do you think, Owen? Would Julia approve?
I don't see how she could not. It's a great dish. I mean, she might not have gone to the trouble to use twice as many ingredients as she had in her recipe, but this is a great, modern, refined rendition of a French classic.
I couldn't agree more, and especially when you have a great glass of wine.
Any recipe that has a wine in its title, I'll take it.